Almost everything you own arrived on one. Your food, your furniture, the bricks in your walls, the bottled water in the shop down the road. Every one of those things spent part of its life sitting on a flat wooden platform about a meter wide. You have walked past thousands of them, stacked behind supermarkets, leaning against fences, piled at the back of building sites, and you have almost certainly never once thought about who owns them. Here is the answer, and it is stranger than you would guess. In an enormous number of cases, the pallet is not owned by the factory that loaded it, not by the truck company that moved it, not by the shop that sold you what was on top of it. It is rented. It belongs to a company you have probably never heard of. It will be collected, repaired, and sent out again, and if you take one home, there are people whose actual job is to come and find it. Not metaphorically. There are asset recovery teams, there are court cases. In one American county there was, for a while, a police task force, over pallets. To understand why anyone would build a business this strange, you have to start with what a pallet actually is. It is not really a piece of wood. It is a standard. Before pallets, loading a ship or a truck meant men carrying boxes, sacks, and barrels by hand, one at a time. A cargo ship could sit in port for days while it was unloaded piece by piece. The pallet changed the unit. Instead of moving 100 boxes, you move one pallet with 100 boxes on it. A forklift lifts the whole thing in seconds. But that only works if the pallet is the same size everywhere. The forklift has to fit, the truck bed has to fit, the warehouse racking has to fit, the shelf in the back of the shop has to fit, so the industry standardized. In North America, the dominant size is 48 inches by 40 inches. In Europe, the standard is different again. And once you standardize a physical object across an entire economy, something interesting happens. It stops being a product and starts being infrastructure. There are somewhere in the region of 2 billion pallets in use in the United States on any given day. 2 billion. Which creates a problem that sounds trivial and absolutely is not. Think about the journey. A pallet is loaded at a factory. It goes on a truck. It arrives at a distribution center. It gets broken down, restacked, moved again, and eventually it ends up at the back of a shop 300 miles from where it started. Now what? The shop doesn't need it. The shop has no use for a wooden platform. It is taking up space on a loading dock that the shop would rather use for something else. The factory would like it back, but the factory is 300 miles away, and sending an empty truck to collect wooden platforms costs more than the platforms are worth. So historically, one of two things happened. Either everybody bought cheap pallets, used them once, and threw them away. Or businesses tried to run exchange systems where you hand over an empty pallet every time you receive a full one, and spent enormous amounts of time arguing about who owed whom how many. Neither is good, which is where the business comes in. The idea is called pooling, and once you see it everywhere in the economy. Instead of anybody owning pallets, one company owns all of them. That company rents the pallet to a manufacturer. The manufacturer loads it and ships it to a retailer. The retailer unloads it. And then the pallet company collects the empty pallet from the retailer, takes it to a service center, inspects it, repairs it if a board is cracked, and sends it back out to a different manufacturer. Nobody in that chain ever bought anything. They paid for the use of a platform for a few weeks. The largest company doing this is called CHEP, part of an Australian group called Brambles, and its pallets are painted blue. Once you know that, you will start seeing them behind supermarkets, on the back of lorries, in the warehouse aisles of every large retailer. The numbers are genuinely difficult to picture. CHEP operates a pool of roughly 345 million pallets, crates, and containers. It runs more than 750 service centers. It operates in around 60 countries. Its customers are the companies whose products fill your kitchen, and the entire business rests on one rule that the company repeats constantly because everything depends on it. The pallets are never sold, not to customers. Not to recyclers, not to anyone. They are rented and they always come back, which is elegant and which creates the single biggest problem this industry has. Because the pallet is in the possession of somebody who does not own it, has no use for it, and is not being paid to look after it. That is a lot of trust to place in a supply chain, and an awful lot of pallets go missing. Some of it is honest. A pallet gets buried under other stock in a warehouse and forgotten for a year. A shipment goes somewhere the collection network doesn't reach. A pallet gets damaged and quietly thrown in a skip. Some of it is not honest at all, because a wooden pallet has real resale value. A standard new one runs somewhere in the region of $11 to $16 in the United States, and there is an active secondary market in used ones, so the temptation is obvious. You have several hundred pallets on your loading dock that you did not pay for. Somebody will hand you cash for them, except those pallets belong to somebody, and that somebody has noticed. CHEP runs an asset recovery team, whose job is collecting pallets back from wherever they have ended up, and a separate asset protection team, whose job is dealing with people who are selling them. The company has described walking onto sites and finding thousands of its own blue pallets stacked around the loading docks, with the operator first claiming they were bought and then claiming truckers had simply left them there. Since the company never sells its pallets to anyone, neither story can be true. In one 2-month stretch, its team identified and recovered close to 100,000 pallets that had been illegally sold to businesses around the country. When people refuse to hand them back, it goes to court. There are real judgments. In one New Jersey case, the company sued a pallet recycler that would not return its property and pursued claims for conversion, the legal term for wrongfully taking control of something that belongs to someone else. Some places have written laws about it. Arizona passed a statute requiring recyclers and resellers to record the seller's details on any transaction involving 5 or more marked pallets, with penalties running up to $30,000. And for a couple of years, Los Angeles County ran a dedicated task force on industrial pallet and container theft. Before its funding ran out, it recovered several $1 million of stolen equipment, made dozens of arrests, and shut down around 30 illegal grinding operations, places chopping up other companies' pallets for the wood. The industry's current answer is to stop guessing. Companies are now fitting tracking devices to portions of the pool, so a pallet can be located rather than merely hoped for, which tells you how valuable the loop is. It is worth attaching electronics to a piece of wood. And if you want to know what happens when the loop breaks, that experiment already ran. In 2020 and 2021, the whole system seized up at once. Sawmills had cut output. Logging slowed. Then demand exploded because people locked in their homes ordered enormous quantities of goods, and every one of those goods needed a platform to travel on. Lumber went from around $260 per 1,000 board feet in April 2020 to over $1,600 by May 2021. Pallet prices roughly doubled. Manufacturers turned away new customers. Some businesses waited weeks for wooden platforms they had never previously had to think about for a single second. And pallets that were still sitting on loading docks, unreturned, suddenly mattered enormously because the pool that everyone depends on only works when things come back. That is the whole thing, really. The pallet is the most anonymous object in the world economy. It has no brand you care about. Nobody chooses one, nobody notices when it works. And underneath it is a business built on a genuinely odd proposition. Buy hundreds of millions of a cheap wooden thing, refuse to ever sell a single one, hand them to strangers and make your money on their coming back. So the next time you walk past a stack of them behind a shop, have a look at the color. If they're blue, somebody is expecting those back. And somewhere there is a person whose job it is to go and get them.